This is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is this is Cadabra, one of the two fuzzy panther kitties, and she wants to be all over my chair, don't you? Yes. So it's like Gary Seven in the original Star Trek. My kitty. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. This isn't really behind the scenes making of Chimera season 3 yet. Strange World season 3 yet. Apparently Nichelle Nichols passed away 2 days ago. So they've got to do a memorial or a retrospective thing. I'm going to show a 2-minute clip of the scene from Starship Locations where she meets up with Nog. And for the first time on the ship, Nog is the captain of the Emmett Till A in the story, because in this universe, it's a little later. It's 2402, and the Chimera A and the Emmett Till A are on a mission to the Tribble planet. Based loosely on a David Gerrold script. If you want to see those fan films, they're here on the Chimera channel. That's where this is going. We had Starship Chimera in 2019, and then the sequel, Strange Worlds, in 2021 and 2022. And so currently they're doing other things over at the Transformer website, but we'll be back to that. But anyway, I'm just going to show the clip, and then I will discuss having met Nichelle Nichols many times at conventions. So I'm going to play the clip, and then the Emmett Till, and the context is that in this universe, Deep Space Nine had a ship called the Emmett Till. But unlike Ira Bear's and Braga's story that they wrote as a pilot for season 8, he doesn't die, because that's just messed up, because Aaron Eisenberg died like shortly after they thought of this story, and it was a coincidence. So he doesn't die. In this timeline, and you figure he's around 700 years in the future, so he's around. Now the premise here is that the character of Uhura lived on to be hundreds of years old, and that she's around 150 or so in this story. But yeah, the character, and as a result of meddling from an alien race that kept her around, because they called the Cillians. You see. So here's the clip, and then I'll be back. Why did you come all this way to hide here on the ship?
Captain Nog, surely you know the essence of subterfuge. Gotta seize the moment. You know, like a song, ya hum it.
I do. I served on Deep Space Nine.
On the frontier, when I was in my youth, we blazed trails like a wagon train to the stars. Experience you should learn to appreciate.
There's a rule of acquisition for every occasion, ma'am.
Call me Yoda. No one's called me ma'am in a long time.
What would you know about the Tribble planet?
I had dealings with them. They were cute, fuzzy things. They mated like bunnies, though, and had a thing for wheat.
You remind me of my Aunt Moogie.
They called her Mookie? On your planet, that's messed up.
Yes, our culture used to be more misogynistic.
Weren't you the first Ferengi to join the Federation?
That is right.
You clearly aren't like other Ferengi.
Tried to be unique, make a name for myself.
You're the first Ferengi in Starfleet. You made a name for yourself.
They promoted me. It was an opportunity I had to take.
It took Starfleet 40 years to promote me. Even Sulu got promoted above me.
I wonder why that was.
Well, Starfleet bureaucracy kept a bunch of us glorified switchboard operators working for years.
What is a switchboard?
I think it was an old communications device.
Ah, a comm badge.
More like the thing of running the comm badges, making all the things work.
Ah, hyperspace radio and subspace radio were not as efficient in your time.
No, it's amazing they communicated at all.
Same now, especially after the space plague. We didn't really improve it.
Comm systems are always first to go down.
I expect your position was very important to the Ventura.
Sometimes it was, but a lot of times it wasn't.
You're a curiosity, man.
I've been told that. The Emmett Till. Curious, your ship is named after a martyr of the early civil rights movement on Earth.
Yes, it is Tubman class, the second ship to bear the name.
Well, you treat her like a lady, and she'll always bring you home.
I will remember that, Admiral.
You do that.
Yeah. An homage to very clearly an homage to Next Generation and Dr. McCoy, who showed up on Next Generation. If you want to see the whole episode, it's the Great Tribble Hunt. Go and watch it. It's awesome. That season was awesome. Second season, a little strange. Did an alien giants thing. But this season, I liked them both, but for different reasons. This season, the last time I saw Nichelle Nichols was at the San Jose Comic Con, which they now call Silicon, because apparently they got in trouble with Comic Con. They couldn't call themselves that anymore. Apparently that's what happened. And we'll be at Silicon this August. So first, Kal Kat and Mark's Cards. We're trying to cement that deal. It might just be Kal Kat, but it looks like it's going to be Kal Kat and Mark's Cards at that convention. So that's in August. That's this month, I should say. Just 28 days or something like that. 27 days. So yeah, this is supposed to be a memorial thing, but yeah, just thought I would update as well. So yeah, Nichelle Nichols saw her at the 2019 convention. She was very elderly, wheelchair. She was friendly. The 2018 convention, that was an earlier one that she was at. The 2017 one, she was tired. Didn't want to. Well, it was at the end of the convention, of course. But this time she was animated. So yeah, she didn't really remember the fans too much, but she was friendly to them. She was always friendly to them. I think there are a couple of smaller conventions in San Francisco toward the end of Creation Cons when it was called Creation Conventions, but it wasn't anything to do with creationism, just Creation Conventions. That's what it's called. And we were people doing that scene over there. Often they would rent the what are those? They would rent the halls and stuff. They had the Freemason. They'd rent their Masons Hall a lot in the later 2000s, later 90s, early 2000s. So they would, there was this one convention in the early 2000s. I think it was an Enterprise one, and it had some Enterprise people, Connor Trainer and that kind of guy, and those guys. There was Nichelle Nichols was there, and so was the guy that played Icheb, and so was Aaron Eisenberg, Nog. They were all there, and because it was a smaller convention, they were just hanging out. The actors were just there, hanging out at their booth or whatever, hanging out, and. Reminiscing and talking stuff about, stuff. She was very down to earth, Nichelle Nichols. She was very, very, very friendly, cordial. So was James Doohan, actually. I met him several times. He was very, very friendly. Michael Dorn was friendly, but sometimes gruff. No, Jonathan Frakes was nice. John DeLance was not as friendly, but yeah. But what's oddly enough is Mark Imeo, the guy who played Dukat, he was extremely friendly. It was weird because he played this evil villain on Star Trek, and he was completely a method actor. He was like totally nice. It was bizarre. But yeah, people look at that. Garrett Wong wrote "Getaway" when he signed the signature. but oh well. Anyway, but this other convention years ago. Talking stuff. And often that legendary story they always bring up in the story of the interracial kiss, the first interracial kiss on television. Shocking. But back then, in the 60s, you didn't do that. The networks were freaked out, right? They weren't even sure they were going to air the thing in certain network markets. They did, though. They aired it in certain network markets. It's a misnomer that it was not aired. It was aired all over the country. Absolutely. And they got fan mail. And they were concerned that the fan mail, because back then, people were extremely prejudiced. And they didn't want to see a bunch of people, all different races on a spaceship, in a fantasy setting like that. And so they assumed letters from the South were going to be bad. And the story that I heard back in the 90s, which has changed over the years, I remember the original story. I wouldn't look it up. The original story was she received a letter from the South from a southern gentleman, man, and they weren't sure to give it to her, but then they looked it over, they screened it, and they said, "No, you got to read this. This is funny." And she's like, "What?" And so she reads it. She reads it, and then this southern guy is like, "I don't know why they're so worried about the Kirk kissing that beautiful Nubian princess. Scott going to kiss her. Come on, man." That's what it said. That's what it said. It's like, okay, yeah. So he liked it. He was like, he was like, I'm not offended by that. I thought that was cool. Kirk could kiss a girl. So yeah, so that's the story. Because back in the day, my mother, who is now 86, the same age as the characters from the show, she had a crush on Kirk back in the day. So, but yes, but William Shatner. We've been Trekkies since I was born, or before, technically. I had siblings that were in the Star Trek Lives convention thing, San Francisco thing, '73. I've had siblings that were was went into rerun. We were watching it on television every night, the original series, and my friends and I went to the conventions in high school. We had our own role-playing game. We were so on the wavelength with the new show, The Next Generation, as teenagers, that we would literally think of an episode one week that they would air the next week. It wasn't that they knew what we were doing. It's that we were on the same wavelength. Or you could think, conspiracy, yes, they knew what these kids were doing in random San Jose, and they were like, we'll just crib their ideas. They'll never talk. Until we showed up at conventions. And the Borg and Kira and all that stuff. But not the guy in the transporter. That was someone else. Met at a convention. Another fan. They're not going to give copyright ideas. Anyway, so yeah, we're okay with it. But they can hire us if they want to. We're around. They know where to find us. But yeah, the original crew was, of course, Kirk, Spock, McCoy, and Scotty, and Uhura, and Sulu, and Chekhov, and Uhura always got the short end of the shiv because she was always just the communications officer and everything. So some of the books made her the communications officer of all the communications in the universe and stuff. And she was like, and she mentioned that at a convention later on, around the time of Star Trek VI, that she's now the head of all the communications in this space. Like, that makes sense. Also, a fan thought of her first name as Nyota. True story. It's a fan name. A fan wrote it in the story, and she liked that because it means peace. So she's like, I like that. Her name is Nyota. It was finally mentioned in the last movie, but it was like, it's part 6. But yeah, they like that. So they're like, so fans have influenced Star Trek and vice versa. So yes, it wasn't us. I'm not taking credit for that. No. Taking credit for the Borg, though. Anyway, taking credit for the scene with my friend John, Mark's Cards, or John, takes credit for the apple scene. Anytime they tossed an apple up and ate it, that was him. They just... Even the Abrams universe, Kirk's tossing up an apple on the bridge, that's him. That's what he did in our fan film in the 90s. Yeah, and then later on, when we posted the fan film online, that's when Abrams saw our fan film of Starcrackers and just copied it. Oh, that's cool, an apple. Yeah, but he was actually copying a very old thing. Anyway, so, but yes, I've been around a long time. Yeah. Approaching 52, so... I'm just a little older than Will Wheaton, or younger than Will Wheaton, it turns out. Younger than Will Wheaton. Yeah. A little younger than Will Wheaton. I think so, yeah. That's right. Yeah. And he's never done conventions, which is, So we did an homage to Nichelle Nichols in, this is kind of rambly, but so I just thought to mention stuff I don't really mention. And that's fine, because she would have done that. She would have rambled on about, like, all the different things I've encountered over the years, But yes, the original crew, I saw Nimoy, But when Nimoy passed away, Mark Cards and I discussed it, and Nimoy tribute as well. Whereas I didn't have a good experience at the two Nimoy conventions, just because they both happened to be at an inopportune time. Had a bad cold at the first one, and they read poetry, and then there was another one where they had something else that was, I think it was a cold again, and it was like, well, it's not Nimoy's fault that I had a bad cold. So. but yeah, but he was kind of dull in person, really. Shatner, though, on fire, absolutely on fire. 2017, he hosted the Next Generation panel, which was weird, at the Comic-Con, San Jose, and he was on fire. Shatner, he was just everywhere all at once, like that, everywhere all at once. So, like, movie. I think that was a play before it was a movie. It's based on something. Anyways, yeah. Nichelle Nichols, yeah. So yeah. It's interesting, like when the next generation, the millennials after our generation, look back at this, going like, how is that even a thing that there was that on television you didn't include people of color? That's just kind of weird, but they didn't do that much. Because nowadays, you have so much people of color on television that it looks like the population of the country is literally 35% people of color, and there's like, it's everywhere. I don't know whether that's the case, but on TV, and that's fine. They like to do that. That's fine. Diversity is cool. Diversity is a constant, and also infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Sure, do that. Yeah, and television doesn't need to reflect necessarily the demographic of America necessarily. It doesn't need to. It can be the demographic of whatever. And as for the inspirations that Nichelle Nichols provided for the Star Trek legend for not just people of color to be on show. It's weird because in the original Star Trek there was only really one African American character on the original show, really, until the movies, and then there was a captain and a first officer that were Terrell and the captain of the Saratoga. The first female captain was the captain of the Saratoga lady from Star Trek 4, not Janeway and not Burnham, but no, lady from the Saratoga was the captain of the Saratoga in 2386. So yeah. So that happened before, way a long time ago in the 80s. So yeah. Next Generation redeemed that by having at least 3 or 4 different people of color as main characters. Michael Dorn and LeVar Burton from Reading Rainbow. So and several guest stars that were of that. Yeah, that was cool. And Michael Dorn played a Klingon, but he's a very handsome, back in the day, very handsome black man, and now he looks like one of those silverfish guy, the silver fox guys are commenting on him looking like, like they got him done up like the sensei from. He looks very interesting. The one from the new one. It's gonna be a kind of bizarre. The new Picard season 3. Yeah, we can't talk about. Yeah, just that. We can talk about that. That's all we can talk about. But yes, the Next Gen cast is coming back. Ooh, spoiler. I hope somebody tosses an apple. That's an apple. Anyway, so, but yes, that's the one that's in California. They filmed Strange New Worlds in Canada and Discovery in Canada, but Picard is down here, so, well, not down here, but further down. So it inspired many characters and actors to do, and Nichelle Nichols inspired even Martin Luther King at the time, who was a peace activist in the 60s. She wanted to quit the show, and he wrote her a letter and said, "No, you can't quit. You're the inspiration for women and people of color everywhere. You're on a spaceship, and you're treated just like everyone else on the spaceship, on the bridge of the spaceship." It's just, oh, well, Martin Luther King. So, okay. Yeah, everybody has to respect Martin Luther King. Everybody. Yeah. Yeah, in his dream and everything. So do that. So yeah, and she inspired a young actress named Whoopi Goldberg, which is awesome. Yes, she inspired Whoopi Goldberg to go into acting, and eventually to be the bartender on the Enterprise D. Whoopi Goldberg. She even said that in an interview. She said, "Yep." To mention women scientists, so and space scientists everywhere. More of an impact than Shatner and Nimoy. Although Nimoy's credit to impact was, of course, the Bilbo Baggins song, which turned the internet asunder after he passed away, and they kept airing it over and over again because it was hilarious. The Bilbo Baggins song. Well, if that's your claim to fame, then besides Spock, then. but yes, Nichelle Nichols, the Admiral of Space. In a 2403 story, she's a retired admiral. She used to be the commander of all Starfleet's communications in the late the 2290s, and she was in charge of all the people doing the communications. So it's canon. So as far as I'm concerned, so she's not only the captain, the commander of the flagship, the Enterprise. Even though technically a flagship would have to have an admiral on it in order to be a flagship, but that's okay. As Star Trek is more of a UN than a Navy, so they just kind of like put everybody on the ship. It's the Federation flagship when there's an admiral. That would be what you'd have a carrier with an admiral on it. And usually that admiral would not go down to the planet. He would send the XO down to the planet, or even the underlings down to the planet. But that's neither here nor there. So yeah, she was an inspiration for all the fans and people and everything. She was very outspoken back in the day, but friendly about it. And there's all these mini stories and things. There's several. With it. Not really a hippie from the '60s at all. None of those guys were. They didn't like hippie. James Doohan classically said he didn't like the hippie episode. It was a nothing, He didn't want to deal with the hippies. They were very conservative for their day, which is funny. But it means something different now. Conservative means something different. Back then, it actually literally meant that, but not anymore. Doesn't mean that anymore. But back then, it meant that. Well, somebody was conservative. They were serving others in the community, conservative. Now it's self-servitive, and only rich guys have this, and the other guys have nothing. So it's completely opposite. It's the closest thing to conservative from the '60s would be progressives now, which is weird. Like, in Hollywood back then, always had a message. It's funny how they have like these guys going on about, the message is going too much on. What they mean is the message for them aggravates them because it makes them think about their responsibilities they don't want to follow. So the message. There's always been a message. Star Trek has always been a message about something. There were classic episodes. Some of them were silly. There was one about where they go to a colony of Earth where they're Yanks and communists on the planet. It was a silly episode, but the idea that this planet had like American flags and it was like a post-apocalyptic planet is kind of bizarre. There was a planet where there were several of them where they did the Vietnam War because it was going on at the time. And there was one in which the Klingons are selling weapons to this primitive planet so they can fight each other back and forth. So there's a lot of it's always been woke. I don't know, and woke isn't something that anybody says other than right wingers. It's not a thing. The message, and some people exploit the message. So there's like some of the Disney shows and some of the other ones on DC and other ones will exploit the message a little too much, and they'll be like, we need to put in our message and theme in here over and over again to hit you over the head with it. That's not what Star Trek did. It was more subtle about it. It would be like, oh, this, even Next Generation to an extent, this alien race is behaving in a way Starfleet doesn't approve of. We have the Prime Directive, and we can't force it upon you. But yes, you can't genocide each other. Don't do that. That kind of thing. Yes. And the '80s progressive was different from the '60s progressive. The '80s, the '80s Reaganomics Next Generation was clearly that shift there. When you go to the Next Generation, they're kind of a shift, the climate shift there, with how that sort of pre-90s, the Reagan era, kind of like said, okay, well, now the conservatives kind of being hijacked by the Republicans, and they're going to use it now, even though it originally was centrist and progressive, and it sort of went this way. And the evangelicals started to hijack it too, mainly because of Clinton in the 90s. And then DS9 was all about the message. The aliens in it were all about the message and everything. The Bajoran conflict with the Cardassians is a clear anagram of Israel and Palestine in the Middle East. It's right there. So yeah. I was going on about the diversity in various alien races, that kind of thing. Originally the Bajoran. Well, first of all, the Klingons and the original Klingons represented the sort of the Chinese. Even though they had a Japanese man on the ship, it represented the Chinese. They had Sulu on the ship. A different group, but still, it's interesting. They made them look like that because they were supposed to be. Then they evolved into sort of Russian Vikings by Star Trek VI, but that was during Next Generation. So Next Generation started in '87. So at that point they became more like biker guys than Russians. Then the Romulans were like Russians and Chinese as well, but more like Romanesque ones, like the sneakier kind, I guess, the spy ones. And they were always like that. And the Vulcans were clearly modeled after Israel, Jewish. The Ferengi were originally modeled after capitalists, including Ross Perot, a totally unknown now guy. And I know that some of the other millennials, they doubt that actually happened, but no, it totally did. Armin Shimmerman, who played Quark, when Deep Space Nine started, it was just sort of a thing between what they said they were going to do Palestine versus the Israelis, but they were going to do it as the Bajorans and sort of the Bajorans and the Cardassians were going to be sort of this quasi space Nazis, fascist guys. That's what they were going to do. Which is not the Palestinians really. I don't know why they went there, but that's what they were thinking. And so they also had, even though they had a reference to Cheers with Norm or Morn, they couldn't say his name was Norm because they just wanted to reference Cheers and not actually get in trouble with NBC. That's true story. But Armin Shimmerman, who played the first Ferengi and then went on to play Quark, modeled his character after Ross Perot, this politician, even though at the time, and it's in the dialogue too. You have a character references of a politician. Quark. And then Odo said that, and Quark says, but people like me are lined up in when provisional governments fall, people like me are lined up and shot. So that's what he says in the story. Like he doesn't want to be the politician. But it's clearly that he's supposed to be this random, excitable, centrist guy called Ross Perot, who was a capitalist, rich capitalist, sort of like an early Elon Musk, was running for, or Jeff Bezos, more like a Jeff Bezos, I think, more like Amazon guy, more like that. He was running for president in the '90s, and they're like, Ross Perot, sure. Even though nobody's going to get it like years later, even 10 years later. But I got it. Yeah, I'd seen him. Yeah, he looked like Ross Perot. He did. Yeah. But that was, when we were all in our 20s at that point, and there was like I don't know where I'm going with that. But other than that, I'm just explaining Star Trek has always had diversity. Star Trek's always been about that since the original crew. The woke thing is silly. It's always been diverse, and that's a good thing. It's always diverse. It bothers the alt-right people, and they call them alt-right people, because they don't want to see a mirror reflected on them, as how they've taken over the whole conservative movement, made it a self-serve sort of movement. They don't want to. They don't want to. They don't want people to realize that's what's going on. It's not even a conspiracy. It's right up. It's right there. It's not a conspiracy. It's right there. And I don't think Nichelle Nichols would have liked that very much. Even now, she's in her 80s. She was 89. Yeah, and she was a product of that era, the baby boomer to after that era, and yeah, they tended to not fret over all the little things that other generations successively have fretted over, and not become obsessed cult-like with other things like that. Although, granted, yeah, you know, politicians. She did lose a brother to a cult, but yeah, it was a cult that happened. You can look it up. Nichols, then like a brother to a cult. So it is possible that some of them did. Yeah, I didn't mean to address that, but well, yeah, it's a cult. So there's yeah, diversity's always been around in Star Trek, and Kirk is the white bread American guy from Iowa, and yeah, Picard is supposedly from France, even though it's clearly England. But even in Picard season 2, they forgot that the vineyard was not. Even though they filmed the vineyard in Napa, they were up in Napa. I've been by where they filmed that thing, but not during. And it was like so when Soong's ancestor gets back to L.A. in one night, which would totally be possible from Napa. They forgot that they were in France, and it's supposed to be in France, and it would have taken him at least 14 hours at least to get home to do that, to do the other things. So yeah, that episode screwed that up. Anyway, kind of rambling around, but it's interesting. The Star Trek pathos stuff. Yeah. So the Transformer episode, the latest one we're doing, we'll have to have a little dedication to Nichelle Nichols in it. And also, yeah, and also, season 3 isn't started yet. It's very preliminary, but it's going to be funny. It's not going to be serious. It's going to be funny again. Or it'll be funny. Yeah. Let me get the cast back together. We're gonna get the whole cast if we can find them. Put them all in there. Oops. Yeah. So yeah, we can still use the character. But yeah, it's just odd. Yeah, this cat is being a kitty. Yeah, you're being a kitty cat, huh? You're a kitty. Hi, baby. Hi. Oh my goodness. What's the matter? What's the matter? Bye-bye.